So today we are going to review for our test. I would ask the teacher to please pause the video at any time to make sure of clear understanding by students. If students are unable to determine a clear answer as a small group or in partners, please ask the larger class to discuss it. If additional help is needed, please have one student ask a nearby math teacher. In this particular case, we are going to make sure that we understand simplification, addition, subtraction, multiplication of radicals, and of course, how to graph them and determine the domain and range. With that being said, we are going to start off with these two simplification problems. Please follow along to the best of your ability and make sure that, again, if needed, pause the video where students need it and have a discussion. This review should take no more than the first 10 to 15 minutes of class. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. If I'm looking at the square root of 12, I need to think about what factors do I need. So in particular, the factors that I am looking to use, would require me to take the square root, of 12. Factors would end up being my 4 times 3. And if I'm looking at doing 4 times 3, then from there, I would look at having my square root of 4 end up being 2. I apologize, my markers are not working, so here we go. My radical would be 4 times 3. Square root of 4 comes out front. It's going to be 2 rad 3. My next one here, I have a negative 2 already hanging out front. It's going to stay put. I need to break down 75 into 25 times 3. Square root of 25 goes to the front, so I would now have negative 2 times 5 in the front. Rad 3. I would have negative 10 rad 3 as my solution. Moving on, addition and subtraction, I would start by looking at what like terms I have to begin with. That would give me a 5 rad 5. I would need to break down 75 into 25 times 3. 5 rad 5 I can't do anything with, so it's just going to stay out front. I would have 9 times the square root of 25, which is 5 rad 3. 5 rad 5 stays put. I would have 9 times 5, which gives me 45 rad 3. I can't do anything more. The radicals are not alike, so there's no more simplification that can be done. Moving over to the second problem here, I have subtraction between the two. You're going to notice that I have 12 and 27. Both can be broken down. So I would have 2, 4 times 3 underneath. 2, bring out the square root of 4, which would be 2 out front. Rad 3. So I would have 4 rad 3 when simplified on this side. Breaking down this one, I would have 9 times 3. Square root of 9 goes to the front, would become 3. Keep in mind that I was originally working with subtraction in between. I would subtract these two, and my final answer I would be left with would be rad 3. Taking a look at multiplication now, I need to consider that there's now numbers in front and numbers left underneath the radical. When I multiply, I take my numbers out front, so I'd end up with 6, and then I would have under the radical 10. 10 cannot be simplified, so I can call this problem complete. The next one, before I get too far into my solving process, notice that there's a square root of 16 or rad 16, which we should recognize would be 4. So I would have 3 times 4, then times 2 rad 3. That being said, I just take my numbers out front. 3 times 4 is 12, times 2 gives me 24 rad 3, and that problem is done. Please don't make this one any more difficult than it needs to be. Simplify this first. You would still get the right answer if you had done 16 times 3 underneath, but it would cause you to have a little bit larger numbers than maybe we're used to working with. Our next and last portion of the review is asking us to do graphs and shifts. Please remember that you have an A value out front, an H value that's underneath, we always take the opposite, and a K value at the end. My vertex or initial point that I would be starting is going to be located at -1, -3. Using that vertex or initial point, I will determine my shifts. A -1 sends me to the left by 1. A -3 would be down by 3. My domain and range, we're going to leave blank for right now. I'm going to flip to the next slide. Let's take a look at putting my initial point in where it belongs. So at -1, -3. Using my graphing calculator, I'll input my equation into y equals, and then I will continue to use second graph or second table, and I'll find all my values that I'm in need of. So I would end up with 0, -5. I would have 1, -5.8. I would have 2 and -6.5. And I would have 3, -7. Placing those over here on my graph, I can then take a look at making sure that I can find my domain and range. So 1, and it would be -5.8. 2 is going to be that -6.5. And then 3 is going to put us at -7. Connect these to the best of your ability into a curve. Using that, let's take a look at the fact of my domain is going to be my x values, which is all of these values here. My range, okay, is going to end up being my y values, which are from here down. I need to transfer that into an inequality for my previous slide. So my x values would need to be greater than or equal to a -1. So x would be greater than or equal to a -1. Viewing my graph again, y needs to be less than -2. So I would go ahead and put y less than or equal to a -2. Hopefully that was enough to refresh your brain. Please make sure that all you have for your quiz is a pencil and a calculator. No other notes are allowed. Good luck, and I'll see you when I get back.